Our theme on this beautiful New Year's Day, or the day of New Year's Eve, is from illness to wellness. How can we, moving into 2018, really find full wellness? If you look around the world, or you talk to friends, or you go on social media, or anywhere you go, what you find is everybody's making resolutions about health. And so I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to give up white sugar, I'm going to give up white flour, I'm going to eat more vegetables. Whatever our New Year's resolution with regard to our health or body may be, everybody has these very, very wonderfully intentional plans for what we're going to do to bring about greater health. And that's great. Nothing wrong with exercising. It's fantastic for your body. And by all means, give up as much sugar and processed food as you possibly can. You'll feel better on every level. But there's a much deeper possibility when we talk about wellness and when we talk about health. And that's what I want to look at today, because as we have a spiritual New Year's, well, anybody could tell you exercise more, eat less sugar, eat more natural foods, eat more fruits and vegetables, don't eat from a box or a can. You don't need a spiritual retreat to tell you that. So what is it that on a spiritual level we can look at that impacts our actual health and wellness? Well, the first thing I wanted to mention is that the word wellness is actually a relatively new word. People have only been speaking about wellness for the last few decades. But the word health, in various etymologies, has been around for about 1,000 years. But here's what's interesting. Originally, the root of the word health was the exact same as that for holiness and that for wholeness, which meant that there was no such way to have quote-unquote health if you didn't also have holiness and wholeness. And I think what's happened today is we've lost the sense of wholeness. We've lost the sense of holiness. And so in order to bring back our health, we've turned to gyms, we've turned to vitamin supplements, we've turned to superfoods, but we've forgotten that there's a way to be super that's from the inside and that actually permeates out, so that rather than it having to just be something that I ingest, and some portion of that's going to make its way into my bloodstream, and some portion of that's going to impact different organs of my body. There's actually a source of superness within us. And that's going back to that root of wholeness and holiness. Now, it's important, of course, to clarify that holiness does not mean religiosity. On a separate subject, yes, we actually do know that people who are spiritual live longer, that they have better immune systems, that they have almost an inoculation against so much of that which ails other people. And this is not research coming out of yoga studios or research coming out of New Age institutes. This is research coming out of places like Duke University, Dartmouth University and Hospital, Princeton University. Top research-based institutions are showing us incredible relationships between what we think, what we believe, and the state of health and wholeness in our bodies. But sadly, most of us have separated that. And this separation of body-mind is what I think has actually caused so much of what we suffer from. Because if you look back about 100 years, even less than that, what you find is that we've eradicated so much of that which plagued us at that time, or close to eradicated. So things that we used to get afflicted by, from mosquitoes, from bad water, from bad food, from flies, from rodents. Most of our worlds do not involve a great threat of illness and death via mosquito, or illness and death via rodent, or illness and death via bad water. And yet, we're not actually that much healthier than we were last century. So we're not that much healthier than we were last century. But what's happened is that there's been a shift. There's been a shift from illness due to things that we catch in the air, things that we're catching from bugs, things that we're catching from bad water, into illnesses that don't seem to have a known cause. Illnesses that are caused by what I refer to as simply dis-ease. A doctor may not be able to diagnose it, a blood test may not diagnose it, and yet there's a sense of dis-ease in the body. My digestion's a mess, I can't sleep, I'm fatigued, I don't feel vibrant. There's so much that's wrong with me. But there's no actual cause. And this is due to our systems being out of alignment, having gone awry from that health, wholeness, holiness confluence. And so I want to look today at how we can really bring that back in our lives. And as I said, when we talk about holiness, it doesn't mean thou shalt be religious. It doesn't mean make sure to go every day to your temple or your church or your synagogue or your mosque or your gurdwara. If you can, fantastic. If you can connect with that, fantastic. But if not, if your spiritual path is not one in which the divine has a specific name or form, don't worry. As long as you can connect to spirit, as long as you are able to connect to that, which isn't just the cells and the muscles and the blood and the organs of our physical body, because that, of course, keeps changing. The cells of the body keep sloughing off and new ones come in. But there's an I that we've been saying long before we had these skin cells, that we've been saying long before we had these blood cells, these organ cells, that we're going to keep saying long after all of the cells of this body today have regenerated. What's that? What's that I? And when you connect with what that is, what you realize is, it's not confined to the body because, of course, as I said, the body keeps changing, literally, cellularly, every minute. And when we connect to that, what we realize is, A, of course, I'm not the body, which means I'm not able to be thrown up and down, thrown around by what happens to it. Most of us, we have a bad hair day, or we've got a pimple, or the scale tells us something we don't want to see, or we look in the mirror and we think, oh God, how could you go out like that? What's wrong with this part of my body or that part of my body? This part's too fat, that part's too thin, there's too much here and not enough there. And we take that as I am worthless, I am ugly, I am unlovable. As though somehow having more or less in a particular part of the body were the criterion for determining our worthiness to occupy our place on earth, as though it were the criterion for determining our lovability, as though it had anything to do with who we are. And so when we connect through holiness to spirit, what we recognize is there's actually no place I end and you begin, which connects us not just to myself, but to the world around us. And that connection is that which brings about health, not just in our minds, not just in our hearts, not just in our spirits and souls, because it's beautiful to be connected, but actually brings health in the physical body. What we know is that people who are connected are healthier. As I said, these top research-based institutions are showing that people who are spiritual actually are less susceptible to illnesses, ailments, whatever it is. I mean, Dartmouth did a phenomenal study of people who walked in to their hospital after their first heart attack. And on intake, in addition to asking all of the other questions, they asked one additional question, which was, how religious are you? And of course, this didn't mean fanatic. This was just how connected are you to the divine? And there were three options: not at all, somewhat, and very. And what they found is that people who checked not at all, after a period of 6 months, about 11% of them or so had suffered a second fatal heart attack. Okay, turns out that's standard. If you look medically at approximately how many people get a second fatal heart attack after the first within 6 months, it's about that, 10 to 15%. And of those who had checked very, very religious, very spiritual, guess how many? Any guesses? None. Yes, exactly. None. None. Not just none percent. No person. No one. Duke did a study where they watched people for about 20 years. And they measured everything ranging from what they ate, what they drank, what they smoked, did they exercise, their social circles. And what they found was that people who regularly attended a place of worship, a church, a mosque, a synagogue, a mandir, a gurdwara, a tree where they gathered with other like-minded souls to worship nature. Didn't matter what the place was. Were 25% less likely to die of any cause during the course of that study. Now, this is amazing when you think about it, because we're not handing out multivitamins as prashad or communion. We're not running medical camps side by side, mass side by side our pujas. It's not do abhishek here and go in and get, a B12 injection over there. It's nothing like that. The air inside the places is no purer. The food is no better. In fact, I don't know about other religions, but in the Hindu mandirs, the food inevitably is greasy, puris and pakoras and, ghee-filled sweets. That's what prasad is, usually. Occasionally they'll hand out fruits and nuts, but usually it's something that's super gooey and greasy and yummy and sweet. So what is it? What is it about attending these places that's serving as an inoculation? And interestingly, a lot of people thought, maybe it was just the social network. But what they found was people who were members of a tennis club or a book club. They didn't get that type of benefit. And you actually had to go. It wasn't enough to just be a member. If you paid your dues but didn't show up, you didn't benefit. So we don't know exactly what it is. But what we know is it's there, it exists. There is something in a deep spiritual connection that pulls you out of your home, out of your bed, off your couch, and into a place of worship to connect with the divine. Whether it's the banks of Ganga for Arati, whether it's an actual church, mosque, mandir, synagogue, doesn't matter. But something that is pulling us there to connect with the divine is changing us on the inside. And we also now know, I love the science of this, so what we also now know is that the emotional neurotransmitters that we always thought were relegated just to our brain, that were relegated just to, oh, my emotional state, oh, I'm depressed, oh, I'm blissful, that just sort of sat in my brain mind. Maybe if it was joy and love, I felt it in my heart a little. But that this was relegated just to my emotional feeling state. What we now know is that the cells of our immune system actually have receptors for all of these emotional neurotransmitters, which means that what we think, what we feel, what we believe is communicating directly with the cells of our immune system. And on a less scientific level, on a more just level of spirit, what we know is that joy and bliss and connection is that which holds us together. It's that glue that holds us together. And so when I am connected, I'm healthy, I'm whole, I'm holy. There's my favorite joke on the subject of the man who goes to the doctor. And he says to the doctor, "Doctor, there's something very, very wrong with me. Whatever I touch, it hurts. When I touch my head, it hurts. When I touch my stomach, it hurts. When I touch my back, it hurts." And the doctor's surprised because usually people have, one complaint. And so he runs every test and every scan. And he calls the man in and he says, "Good news is, there's nothing wrong with your back, with your stomach, with your head, with your shoulders. The bad news is your finger is broken. And since your finger is broken, naturally, whatever you touch, it hurts. But it hurts not because the problem is outside. It hurts because the problem is in this broken finger." And this is how most of us move through the world. Our lives hurt. But we blame it on the traffic on the freeway. We blame it on our in-laws. We blame it on our spouses or our lack of a spouse. We blame it on our children or our lack of children. We blame it on our job or our lack of a job. Whatever it may be, we blame it on all of these things outside. When actually, really what's causing the pain is that broken connection inside. That broken connection between us and ourself. And again, it bears repeating because we have people of every race, every religion, every culture. It's not about the name or the form that you use for God. It's not about how you connect. It's about that connection. Because what that connection brings us in touch with is the source. Is the source of joy, the source of health. When you take a pill, ranging from an antibiotic to a paracetamol, whatever you take, what's it doing? It's kicking in your own body's mechanisms. Medicine that does not interact with mechanisms that already exist in our body is useless. In fact, that's how they've created, all of that like fake fat, all of your, sort of non-fat potato chips and all of these fake fat chemicals that they create. Seriously, this is how they do it, is they create it out of molecules that our bodies have never seen or heard of, have no idea what to do with, and therefore they literally just pass straight through the gut and out the other end because our body's like, that is a foreign thing. Doesn't go into our bloodstream, therefore doesn't change our blood sugar, doesn't make us gain weight. So in order for something to impact us, it has to be hooking into a molecular system, a cellular system that already exists in our bodies. Which means that within us already exist all of that we need in order to heal ourselves. And all of that which we're swallowing or injecting is just activating the mechanisms within ourselves. But we forget that. And so we turn around and we think, it's going to be this antibiotic. It's going to be that medicine. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. It's going to be this technology. It's going to be this invention. That's what's going to fix me. And so we keep inventing more and more things that tragically actually end up making us sicker. We think we've invented them to help us, but they actually end up making us sicker. My favorite story on this, true story, not a joke, true story, is when I was back in America and was reading the magazine in Southwest Airlines. And in the magazine, they always have this vocabulary exam. And, you're sitting on the plane, you want to test your knowledge or increase your knowledge. And so they have all of these brain teasers and tests in their magazine. And this was a vocabulary test that had a word at the top and then a multiple choice questions of what the word meant. And the word was nomophobia. And again, true story, not a joke. So I thought, well, I've got a PhD in psychology, phobia. Okay, so a paralyzing fear, an irrational fear. A fear that literally thwarts our ability to live our lives healthfully. But of course, the makers of the exam were smart, and every single one of the multiple choice answers was fear of this or fear of that. And so I couldn't figure out what it was, and I flipped the page to see the answer. And it turns out, and this is an actual new word in the English language dictionary, you could walk into a doctor's office and be diagnosed with this. Nomophobia means the paralyzing fear of being without a working mobile phone. And again, while it's funny, not a joke. There are two root causes of this. One is my phone is literally just not with me. The other cause is my phone's battery is dying. And of course, this was a couple years ago, so it was before those battery packs were invented where you could, charge your phone on the go. So we've invented these machines to theoretically make our lives better. And I'm not saying that they haven't been fantastically useful in a whole variety of ways. But what they've given us is yet another possible illness, because it's us who's using them. That's the key in all of this. It's us. That internal sense, that internal self, that spirit, that's me. And when I'm separated from that, whether I'm interacting with a paracetamol, whether I'm interacting with an antibiotic, whether I'm interacting with a mobile phone, it's all about how I'm interacting. And this is where, as we speak about a spiritual shift, this is where that shift is so important and so possible. Because if it's not about a mosquito bite, and it's not about rodents, and it's not about contaminated water, it's all about me. It's all about my mind. It's all about the shift in my mind. So let's look at that for a minute. What we know is that what we think, and this is something I speak about in here a lot, is that what we think literally manifests out into the outer world. Literally is vibrational energy that is changing the world around us. Those air conditioners emit cold air. Now they're not on, of course, because it's December, but they emit cold air. If we turn them on and you stand in front of them for a few feet, you're going to get cold air. Your actual body temperature will change. If they were heaters, they would emit hot air, your body temperature would change. We are much more complex energy transmitters. But that which we think in our minds, that which we feel, we're literally emitting outside, and we know that now because we have machines that can read those brainwaves. Which means that we have the ability to transform the world around us. And this is where, when we talk about the shift from illness to wellness, what is it that's causing the illness? Well, Pujya Swamiji speaks so beautifully about the I. The I is the ego. The I is the one who says, it's all about me. It should be how I want it, when I want it, as much as I want it. And if that happens, I'm great. You dance according to my tune, I'm happy. The world moves how I want it to, I'm in peace. And when I'm in peace, my blood pressure slows down. My heart rate slows down, right? I have a cascade of actual biological, chemical things in my body that make me healthier. But when I'm not, when you're not dancing according to my tune, when what I want is not happening, I'm having a stress response. And this is really the source of the dis-ease that we all suffer from today. The problem is it has become so epidemic that we literally think We think it's normal. It's the new normal. You know, if you wake up in the morning and you take your temperature and the thermometer says 102, and you ask people around you, what's your temperature? And they say 98.6. You're going to say, I've got a fever. Okay. Something's wrong. I'm ill. I need to see a doctor. I need to take medicine. I need to do something. But if you take your temperature and it says 102, and you ask people around you, what's your temperature? And they say 102. You're going to say, all right, I'm normal. Right? Now you see how dangerous this is, because in both cases, a fever is ravaging your body. Or rather, an infection is ravaging your body. The fever is just the symptom. The fact that that same infection is ravaging everybody else's body, or a variety of infections are ravaging their bodies, does not make you any healthier. But because that's become the new normal, because everybody else also has a fever, now I don't go to the doctor. Now I don't think I need medicine, because this is the new normal. And that's what has happened with stress. You say to anybody these days, how are you? Oh my God, I'm so stressed. I'm so stressed. And it's everything ranging from how much we have to do, to what's going on in our families, to what's going on in our workplaces, to what's going on in our political systems, to what's going on with the stock market. I'm so stressed. And the problem with that is that it's continually giving a message to our body that says, you are being threatened. Your life is being threatened. We spoke the other day about the sympathetic nervous system response. The heart rate increases. The blood pressure increases. All of my energy, my blood, my pran, my ojas moves from my internal systems to my extremities. So my digestion shuts down, my reproductive system shuts down, and all of the energy shifts to my extremities so that I can run or I can fight. This fight or flight nervous system. But now when the stress response has been activated by things like, I didn't get the promotion I wanted. These people are talking badly about me. I've gained a few pounds. I've got a pimple. There's traffic. Our bodies are constantly living in this overload, which we of course know isn't good for us emotionally, but it's also what's killing us physically. But the problem becomes on a spiritual level is we're so convinced that the problem is outside that what we find ourselves doing is saying things like, you better do what I want you to do, otherwise I'm going to get stressed. Look, my blood pressure is up, so you better behave. I was really peaceful, and then you walked in the room. Like you are the cause for my lack of peace. And this is all wrong. Because you can never get the world to dance enough to your tune. You know, it's like that game that we used to play when I was a kid in arcades before we had lots of, video games or handheld games. And there was a game where there were lots of holes in a board. And you'd put in your quarter and the game would start, and from one of the holes a little beaver would pop its head up. And you had this hammer, this soft hammer, and you would bop the beaver on the head and the beaver's head would go down. And then it would pop up from a different hole, and you'd bop it, and it would pop up from a different hole, and you'd bop it. And the more you bopped them, the faster they would pop up. And from more and more and more and more holes until you were literally, doing this until either your time ran out or you missed enough of them that you had to put in another quarter to start over. But this is what our lives have become in managing our own stress. is it's become about how can I manage the world outside? How can I bop down the beaver of traffic? Okay, we've got to, make more money so we can buy a house closer to where I work so that I don't have to sit in traffic. Bop down the beaver of my relationships. You better act like this, do this, help me with this, respond to me like that, speak in this way, dress in that way, bop down that beaver. Bop down the beaver of our career. And we keep bopping beavers in an effort to manage our existence so that we can be stress-free. And of course, the sheer bopping of them raises our heart rate, exactly, makes us stressed. And as we do it, they just get faster and they get more. And this is where spirituality teaches us, no. It's about self-management, not stress management. It's about how can I unhook my internal well-being from the ups and downs of the waves around us. And when I do that, what I realize is it's not all about me. Because that's where the I is. It's all about me. These people are speaking in this way or acting in this way, or you did this or you did that. And we take it all as it's about me. You must have done that because you wanted to hurt me. You must have done that because of me. It's all about me. What I want, what I need, what I'm not getting, who's giving it to me, who's not giving it to me, who's the obstacle on my path. And when we live like that, this is where, we always teach that spirituality is not some super esoteric concept. Spirituality is just connected to spirit, focused on spirit, living as spirit, rather than living as an object. Because if I live as an object, as this physical body, where it's been, what's happened to it, how much it weighs, how much it earns, how many years it's been on earth. If I live as an object, then I see others in the world as objects. And they're either objects that are hurdles on my path, so I need to obliterate them, or melt them, or do something else with them. Or they're objects I can use to get what I want. Whether it's sensual pleasures, whether it's getting ahead in my career, whatever it is, other people then become objects. And this is the source of suffering. Because as we began with, if connection is the source of health and wholeness, then separation is the source of suffering. And so when our focus on I shifts to a focus on we, then literally the word illness becomes the word wellness. If you literally substitute WE for I in illness, what you get is wellness. And that's the message of how to move into a place of wholeness. Wholeness is not just me as this physical bones and muscles and blood and cells, but wholeness is a capital me that includes you. There's no distinction. There's a distinction in form, but not a distinction in content. Thich Nhat Hanh, the beautiful Buddhist teacher, says enlightenment is when the wave realizes it's the ocean. Enlightenment is when the wave realizes it's the ocean. And so when I realize I'm this form, sure, but what I really am is ocean, which means you may be that form, but you're also ocean. And you may be this form, but you're also ocean, which means we're all one. And then I'm able to take a deep breath and an exhale. Because suddenly it's not all up to me. Suddenly it's not all about me. Suddenly the source of that which I'm looking for is already with me. You know, Mahatma Gandhi said so beautifully, he said, what's the point of running so fast when we're running in the wrong direction? And this is what we're doing. We're running in the direction outside. If I could just buy more, own more, achieve more, then I'd have everything I'm looking for. But of course we keep doing that. And we're no closer to the joy, to the peace, to the wholeness that we're looking for. In fact, we're farther. Because you cannot simultaneously run in two directions at the same time. You cannot run north and south at the same time. You cannot run east and west at the same time. I cannot be focusing externally and focusing internally at the same time. I can be acting externally, serving externally, moving externally, of course. That's doing my karma. But my focus for what I'm looking for, my peace, my joy, my wholeness, it has to come within. There's a beautiful mantra that we chant every night that says Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vishishyate. And what it means is that, the capital T that, the supreme that, is whole and complete, divine, Purn. And this, which has been removed from that, created out of that, is also therefore whole and complete and infinite and perfect and divine. It's like Math 101, right? Infinity minus 10 is what? Infinity. Infinity divided by 100 is infinity. Infinity divided by 7 billion is infinity. And so if our concept of the divine, again, by any name, any form, is infinite, then we, as those who have been created out of that, as reflections of that, as embodiments of that, are also whole and complete and divine. But this is a shift in thought. And this is where the shift has to happen from outer to inner. So instead of focusing on the world around me, the padistiti, the external situation, as being that which is going to change my internal situation, my swastiti, I have to focus first on my swastiti, my own internal situation, my thoughts. I saw a beautiful sign once that said, watch your thoughts and you will see the future. Watch your thoughts and you will see the future. And this is really powerful because our thoughts are actually that which, as I was saying earlier, create the world outside. But there's an incredible, very, very specific aspect when we think about the power of our thought. Because the mind, the brain, doesn't actually distinguish between that which is happening in this world and that which is happening internally. This is why if you have a very scary dream, you wake up and your heart is literally racing. It's why if I say to you, close your eyes and imagine your dearest loved one getting run over by a car right now, every one of your hearts is going to start beating a little faster. Every one of your palms is going to start sweating, even if that dearest loved one is sitting right next to you. So you know they're not in the middle of a crowded street. But simply by thinking about that possibility, it creates a stress response in the body. The body doesn't distinguish very well between that which I'm creating in here and that which I'm creating here. They did a wonderful study where they took people who had never played the piano and they showed them a very simple song on the piano. They watched somebody play a simple song on the piano. And then for 2 weeks, they divided them into 2 groups. And for 2 weeks, one group had to spend a few hours a day imagining themselves playing that song on the piano. They would close their eyes and imagine themselves rehearsing it. The other group actually played the song on the piano every day for 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, they brought the groups back together, and what they found was that both groups played almost identically. Those whose fingers never touched the keys, but who had spent 2 weeks simply imagining themselves playing that song, actually were almost just as adept at playing it as those who had been practicing it every day for 2 weeks. The mind literally believes its own stories, whether it's a dream that we have in the night and that wakes us up with our heart racing, or whether it's the stories we tell ourselves about the world around us. Imagine for a moment that you have pain in your arm, okay? Just imagine for a moment that you've got very, very, very bad pain in your arm. Now imagine that you have that arm amputated, okay? Pain is so much, doctors say we've got to amputate it. So the doctors amputate your arm, okay? Now you are 6 months out of your operation. It's healed properly, all of the swelling has gone down, everything's great, wound is cleared. You're 6 months after an operation. You're all cured except you simply don't have that arm anymore. Now tell me, how likely do you think it is that your right arm would still hurt you? Anybody? I'm sorry? It hurts. The right arm hurts. Anybody disagree? Well, wait. If the arm has been amputated, how does it still hurt? It hurts, yeah, but how? Thank you. Okay. And this is why I love this example. Interestingly, it's not just memory. It's not just I'm having a memory of the pain. But the neurons in my brain are actually still firing pain. And here's what's really fun about it. The cure for that, which they now have discovered, the cure for that is a trick with boxes and mirrors where they literally put your other arm in a box and with mirrors and things and blindfolds and different visual fields. They convince your brain that the other arm is there again. And they have you release, if in your mind it's in a fist or it's jammed up or the muscle is tight, they literally have you release it with this box and mirrors and blindfolds. And that cures it. And I love this because pain, there's nothing more physical than pain, right? You fall down, you stub your toe, it hurts. Where does it hurt? It hurts in my toe. I've got a pain in my arm. Where does it hurt? It hurts in my arm. Well, now that the arm is gone, why does it still hurt me? And the truth is more than 50% of people who have had amputations continue to have pain in the limb that has been removed. Which means if something as obviously physical, obviously, of course, in quotation marks, as obviously physical as pain exists not in the limb I think it exists in, but rather exists in my own brain mind, such that more than half of us continue to have pain in a limb that no longer exists. Well, how many of us are having pain about interactions that never took place? Things people did that they never did. Things they said they never said. And I don't mean we've created it out of the blue. Someone who never had arm pain isn't imagining it. It's just that maybe they said it decades ago. Maybe they said it, but they didn't mean any harm. Maybe we misinterpreted it. Maybe we took it totally out of context. Whatever it is, that conversation, that relationship, that action is as gone as my arm that was paining me that's been amputated. It no longer exists. But I'm holding on to that pain in my mind. And also what I love is that the treatment, of course, is not some very intensive, extensive or intense, expensive process. It's boxes and mirrors and blindfolds. And yeah, you got to know what you're doing. You've got to have it done by someone who knows what they're doing. But it's playing a trick on our minds. The answer to that pain is playing a trick on our minds. Convincing us that we've got two arms where we only have one arm. Which means that it's all about the mind. And if we can grab hold a little bit more on the mind and stop letting it play tricks on us, stop letting the mind tell us there's pain in the arm. There's pain in that relationship. There's pain in that conversation. There's pain in what that person's saying or doing. Or there's pain from 30 years ago. And recognize that doesn't exist. The place of the pain, the source of the pain is my mind, which means that's where I need to work. Doesn't mean I've made it up. Doesn't mean I'm stupid. There's no judgment attached here. It's a very real neurological issue. Simply being in our minds doesn't mean that it's wrong or it's stupid or we should know better. But it gives us very clearly the place to look for the solution, which is in my mind. Which is where, as we move into this year, it's so important to resolve. How can I think differently? How can I identify differently? How can I let go of the stuff that is blinding me from living in the light? How can I let go of the stuff that's the dirt on my windshield? We all want the light to be there. We want grace to be there. But it's already there. It's like the sun is shining, but if our windows are caked with dirt, we can't see it. If our blinds are drawn, we can't see it. So we sit inside praying to the sun and doing sun salutations and sun mantras and sun prayers. But the sun is there. And in the same way, grace is there, divinity is there, wholeness is there, holiness is there, and therefore health is there. But we have to remove that which is blocking it from us. And of course, this doesn't mean you're never going to get a fever, you're never going to get the sniffles, you're never going to fall and break a limb. As I always say, spirituality is not an inoculation for the bumps of life. People you love will die. Bad things will happen. You'll get sick. People you love will get sick. There will be traffic. The stock market will crash. People will not do what you want them to do. But what spirituality is the inoculation for is my internal world getting shaken by what happens in the external world. It's that internal connection, like the finger. Doesn't mean the guy's never going to get a headache. Doesn't mean he's never going to have a stomach ache. But touching a head that hurts with a finger that's not broken is a lot less painful than touching a head that already hurts with a finger that's broken. And so this is the message of moving into this year when we talk about new you. It's not about bringing something new from the outside. It's not just about, as I was saying yesterday, a new clothes or a new hat or new shoes or a new job or a new spouse or a new house. We think all of those new things would make us happy. But it's about removing the obstacles within me to connecting within, to living in that experience of wholeness, such that it's me who's new from the inside. It's my experience of myself, rather, that's new. It's my ability to see the wholeness, the completeness, the fullness, the divinity of myself, which is new. And that's the newness that we're looking for. And that's something that's already in all of us.